Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is the creator of a show called The Mediation Files. Now, this one was a bit interesting when I came across this because I was sitting down and I was trying to figure out what exactly you do. But before I go into that, welcome to the show, Ryan Keefe. How you doing?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. See, okay, this is interesting because
Sure.
your show, from an outsider's perspective looking in, okay, the setup of the show is you have a few people and you're the mediator,
Right.
and you are mediating a squabble, a situation. And to be honest, when I looked at that, I was like, that's brilliant. That's a fantastic concept. I've never seen that before.
Thank you.
If it's been done before, I haven't seen it. But big but. So, and of course, when I reached out to you, I was like, these are actors, right? And you were like, yes. And you were very transparent about that straight away. And I was like, okay,
Absolutely.
this is interesting. And when I was planning the research for this show, because I'll just say as well, everyone that ever appears on this show, I want them to come off the show in a positive light. You know, people look at them favorably, stuff like that. So this isn't me mocking you or
Sure.
trying to destroy the structure of your show. I just want to understand. Okay,
Okay.
I just want to
Absolutely.
understand.
Absolutely. Shoot away. Shoot away. Listen, everybody, I get so many questions about this show. And from an outsider view looking in, it's just a weird show. you know,
How long have you
like
been
from
doing
it.
it now?
So now I want to say 2 years. two
Damn.
years now.
Okay.
And like you mentioned, I mean, it's a weird show. The hardest part is finding people, trying to collaborate the time schedules with people, because we have people from all over the world,
Yeah.
right? We have people from England, Canada, Australia. Like, we have people from everywhere. And so collaborating the time zones, I think, is one of the hardest parts about doing this, when you want to reach out and not just stay in the States.
Okay, but like when you, what I'm trying to understand with this, right, is
Yeah.
why not just do it for real? Why have actors? I don't get that. Please explain this to me.
Okay. So if you, like you said, you watched the show and things like that, and the motivation came from obviously court shows, judge shows, things like that. And one thing I noticed is that a lot of people are scared to have their real problems come out, right? So as out of the world as my show is, right? It's all written, I wrote it. It's hard to find people that are like, okay, absolutely. I did have this issue with a babysitter who was an arsonist and she kidnapped my kid. And, it's hard. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be like regular court shows where I found them to be kind of bland, right? I found them to be very normal and just what you would expect, typical. So I wanted to make something outrageous, completely out there. And I knew only a select few people would actually be into this, because there are so many people that have turned it down that I can't do this, even if it's scripted. I can't do this. I can't do this. And it's like, so that's where I knew easier to go scripted than to go real.
I don't know if maybe you've considered this before, but like, okay, I'll just say this now. I want this show to succeed. I really do,
Sure.
because I think that there's a lot of potential in this idea, but it needs a major tweak. I think that
Okay.
it doesn't make sense. And this is the thing. I showed it to a housemate of mine and I was like, hey, look, check this out. And I was like, this is scripted, right? Like, I'm not imagining this. And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay. So, and then I started sitting down and then we had a laugh about it and stuff, and it's fun. And don't get me wrong, it's entertaining, but
Yeah.
I just couldn't get, for the life of me, understand like the motivation behind it. And we'll get into your goals and motivations in a second, right? For just
Sure.
in
Sure. Sure.
general at large. But as far as the structure is concerned, have you ever thought about maybe, because you said that your problem is that you've had difficulty finding people that would do this for real, and I completely understand that. It's you're throwing yourself out there. It's, you know, it can only really bring negative things, especially when it's a problem like this. And I was wondering, like, what if you would get people to agree to share their stories, but get the actors to portray it, so you can sort of say like, oh, hey, this is these are all true stories, but these are paid actors, and it's like transparent. So it's like it is real, but
Right.
it's played out by actors.
Hmm.
Eh?
No, that's a good idea. That's
Eh?
a good, that no, that's a very I like that. I never really thought of that. I always just thought about skipping the middleman, of
Okay.
the real story of the real stories, right? Skipping the and I was like, well, if somebody's gonna come up with a crazy story, I can come up with a crazy story, right?
Okay.
I can come up with something completely ridiculous, you know. But I like that idea actually of having people come up with their real stories. I just don't know how absurd they're gonna be. And that was the key to the whole show was just absurdity. Nothing serious, borderline of this is realistic, but probably not, kind of that borderline. And so that was the passion. Like that was the motivation, I think,
Okay.
for this. But here, I could put out my feelers definitely. And if people came on, they're like, okay, I have this story, but I want to remain anonymous, completely anonymous. I have this story, then that would definitely give me more stories to tweak.
I just feel like it would be more compelling if it was real. Like that's the kind of the difficulty that I have with this idea. It's not that it
Yeah.
doesn't have potential or that it's not good, because
Yeah, yeah.
I sat down and to be honest, the most important thing is a show entertaining? This is entertaining, but it's it's a bit like professional wrestling. Now, bear with me on this analogy, but
Okay, I'm listening, I'm listening.
like when you're watching it and you kind of get pulled and suckered out of it because something will, um, what's the expression they use? It will, it makes it difficult for you to suspend your disbelief. I feel like the fact that
Okay.
you know that it's not real. Maybe wrestling's a bad example because everyone knows it's not real.
Right, right.
But maybe like that kind of sucks it out because then you're wondering like, oh, well, what is the purpose here? What's the point? If the point is to just share fun stories, I get that. It's like storytelling. It's fun. I get that.
Right, right.
But I feel like, especially with the rise of popularity in things like true crime and like reenactments. I know here in the UK we've got like and this has been happening for many many decades. Like these
Yes.
reenactment shows where they'll show a scenario and they'll deconstruct it with like quite graphic kind of reconstructions, but they'll use paid actors, and it's quite compelling and it's quite, I suppose, visually stimulating because you're not only are you hearing the real people involved or people close to them or something like kind of talking about it, maybe it's investigators, whatever the case may be, but you're kind of also getting the adage of seeing like a visual interpretation of it, so it kind of helps you visualize the situation.
Gotcha.
And I feel like with this idea, it would be, I feel like it would take off if it was based on a true story. I really do. I think there's something to that.
Okay. No, I get it. And a lot of my stories don't come from just my mind. They're
Mm-hmm.
tweaked, based on what I've seen. Like the example, one of the last episodes I did was called St. Augustine. And I don't know if you saw that one, but that was basically that was based off a story I got from actually one of my I don't want to say co-writer, but he gives me ideas a lot. And that idea was based off a guy who uses inmate searches to find women because he wasn't good on Tinder or Bumble. So what he would do is he would go to the prison inmate search website and he would bail out random women and they would have to come home with him. And so that was the basis of that
Sorry,
idea, but it was a real story. And then it got tweaked to, however it formulated in the in the show.
back up for a second. This is a thing. You can there's
Yeah.
a directory
Yeah,
you
this
can
is a
you can
I
date
didn't know
prisoners.
about it either, but like I said, one of my co-writers, he told me, he's like, yeah, man, there was this guy in St. Augustine who he would bail out these random women, spend this random money on these women, usually low money, and they would have to come home with him. And then when he was done with them, he'd either get them hooked back on whatever substance they were on, and then just throw them out. And I was like, that sounds like a great story. Okay, we can make something out of that.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
bad. That's bad. Did
yeah.
you did you
And
not
so
did you not question your friend for that? That sounds a bit dodgy.
I mean, you've seen the rest of the show. Most of these the episodes are a lot dodgy. So, I didn't. I
They're
just
not
said,
real
man, that's
though.
a
That's the thing. If they were real stories, I'd be like, oh my god. Like I remember the first
yeah,
one that I saw was something like, and I nearly believed it was true, and then I saw a few clues here, and then I was like, oh, okay. It
yeah.
was like a guy doing doing something where he was like trying to screw someone over with relation to like gas or something,
That
and
and actually that one was legit. That was the debt settlement episode. That debt settlement is legit. Again, that's just you
but
try to
they're
that
actors. They're actors in that
they,
particular one.
they are actors.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the stories are coming from, the stories are coming from real life. It's just they're actors. But yeah.
Okay, so this gets more and more. The further we go down this rabbit hole, the more interesting this gets. So, like, there
Yeah.
are true elements in what you're doing. It's just
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In every one of these stories, there are pieces of truisms in it, like the debt settlement, like you just mentioned. I mean, you pay debt settlement companies to basically settle your debts, and he got screwed over because she didn't know what she was doing. So that was, realistic, and most of them have some ring of truth. They're just kind of stretched in a little different direction is all, with a little fabrication to
so.
make it a little absurd.
So, what are your goals for this show? Like, what are you trying to do? Do you want to pitch this to, like, I don't know, Netflix or something, or are you trying to scale it up? Like, what's the purpose?
Um, it just started off as a fun thing, honestly, just to get the creative juices flowing, just to keep my creative mind flowing.
Okay.
But I think inevitably, I mean, I want to become a writer. I want to become a writer. As far as being on camera and things like that, I don't mind, but I like being behind the camera a little bit better. Video editing, producing. I like that kind of stuff a little bit better than being on camera. Like I said, I don't have that charisma that you have to be in front of the camera, you know, where people are like, oh my God. But behind the camera, that's where I'm okay. I'm okay with.
I get it. I get it. Like for me, I'm fascinated with the filmmaking process. Like if I'm ever on
Okay.
set, like I love obviously being on camera, but I also, as soon as the scene is done, I'm like right there behind the director, like, oh, we could try this, or what about this? Or like,
Yep.
like I suck at writing, but I'm an ideas guy, so that's where I love to be, like that creative. But I totally get that, man. Like it's we all have the places that we're more comfortable with, and
Hmm.
yeah, and once you start exploring that, it just uh,
Yeah.
possibilities
And
are
I think
endless, you know.
that's what it is once you get into the world, I think once you get into this entertainment world, and you realize, because the biggest revelation for me was I lived in California. um, and once I was in like North Hollywood, I realized, I was like, man, being on TV and kind of getting in the industry, it's not as difficult as you might make it feel. It's not that bad. Like once you get like a little bit of a taste of it, you want more. And then you want to figure out where your niche is and where you're comfortable. But then you're also wanting to learn every part of the industry. And you're like, okay, I see people on TV. Okay, I can do that. Okay, I can do that. It's not out of the realm of possibility once you've done it once or twice. And you're like, oh, I can conquer this mountain a little bit.
I think it depends though. Like
Okay.
one thing I've learned recently is so important to work on your reputation and how
Sure.
you present yourself. And like for instance, I've had opportunities here in England to be on television for like reality stuff, right? As you said,
Okay.
like it's really easy, especially with reality stuff, to get on TV. Like
Mm-hmm.
any old person can get on TV, but like whether or not it will actually be beneficial for you is another story. Because I mean, that show could make you look like a fool on purpose, and they
Mm-hmm.
can do that maliciously by like cutting things up. Like that's why I never used to understand growing up, but now I fully understand it. When people say, "Oh, that
Right.
that was taken out of context," that's what that
Mm.
means. It means if they totally changed something up, maybe made it sound a lot worse than it is, or make you sound
Exactly.
right. Yeah, as like, I remember, I don't know if I've told this story before actually, but I remember I was applying for something in the States, some sort
Yeah.
of like weird YouTube game show, and the only reason I applied was because I think they said like, oh, you get some IMDb credits and you get like shown on this YouTube channel, and they, I was suck it in. It's like, oh, it looks like a real opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And then we get through to, or I get through to, I guess, like the casting stage. So you've got the casting director, or like, I don't know, it wasn't like an official director. It was just, I guess, like a kind of assistant who's managing these sessions. And
Okay.
then you've got about 20 other people in there, right? And it's presented as like, oh, have fun, take part in each round, and then round by round we're going to kind of kick people out, and then we'll have our final participants that will get through to go into the show, right? That's not even
Right.
the worst part. I'm getting there. So
Yeah, I
like,
was gonna say that sounds rough. Okay.
it's rough. Like that, the first round was brutal. Like immediately after the first round, the assistant turns to like the guy who didn't really speak much, and she's like, "Oh yeah, so you were kind of boring and you didn't do anything, so we're gonna let you go." And it was like, raw, like you didn't really even engage with him. It was basically the way they presented it was, oh, be entertaining, just do
Yeah.
it, just be it. So you had to like kind of dance a bit, you know what I mean? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
that shit's embarrassing, man. Like the way I refuse to do that, and I observed that, and I was like, "Wow, shit, this is brutal." Rounds keep going. I make a genuine mistake. Like I spoke when I shouldn't have. Like there was a rule where you weren't supposed to speak during someone else's round or something. I made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
But the secretary like just comes for me. She doesn't know it's me initially, but I'm an honest guy, so I owned up.
Yeah.
And what she said was like, "Oh, who spoke? Who spoke in this particular section? Someone spoke," and I'm like, "Oh, that was me. It was a mistake." Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like,
Sure.
"Oh, you were," and it got really serious. She was like, "You weren't supposed to speak. That was the wrong thing to do. You were not supposed to do that." And I was like, hey, it's fine. Like, and I had to mediate this situation. So I'm not the leader of this. I'm just a
Yeah.
guest. I had to be like, you know what? It's okay. I'll just leave. No worries. Thanks for your time. And there was just an awkward silence. And I saw some of the, and bear in mind, this is grown adults. We're grown adults. Some of these
Sure.
people in this room, 30s, 40s, right? Like, it was like being at school. When someone did something wrong and everyone's like,
Oh, ooh,
like
yeah.
that.
And
It was like I was like, are you people for real? Like, what playground shit is this? I what? And then I just left, and immediately I was like, well, I dodged a bullet there. Like, what the fuck was that? But my point with all of this is that you get these opportunities. There's always opportunities, but whether or not they're the right
Right.
opportunities for you, both now and in the long term, it's another story. So
Yeah.
there you
You
go.
know, you're right. And but I also think that the way society and media and television movies has shifted, right? Because like you said, you go on a reality TV show and they can make you look like a fool, right? They can make you look, just completely like you have no idea what you're doing in life. Like you can't, walk across the street without holding somebody's hand. But now the most absurd talent gets rich and gets famous and gets, acknowledgement, right? It's that thin line between, okay, this person is legitimately talented, or we can use this person because people love how you know what I mean, completely ridiculous they are. You look at some of these shows that we have now, and you're watching them and you're just like, man, this show is crazy. There's no talent here. There's nothing, but they're famous, they're rich, you know what I mean? They get all the spotlight. So there's that fine line of, do you take this project because it may launch your career, or do you not take this project because you don't want to be seen in a certain way, and it might take you longer to get, to launch your career? And there is that thin line, especially now. You look at all the TV shows out there, half of the TV shows have no talent. It's just shock value, or it's just for views, or it's just for distraction purposes. Writing is completely changed nowadays to, I guess, what everybody wants to see. So it's a thin line. Does that kind of make sense?
No, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think you see that a lot on like TV soap operas, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously are designed to be formulaic, and but you see the same stuff again and again and again and again. And as you said, it's just continual shock value because that's what gets attention. But I don't know. I feel like it all comes down to that 15 minutes of fame thing.
Okay.
Like becoming famous used to be a big deal,
Mm-hmm.
many decades ago. Now, not so much.
It's
Anyone,
not.
yeah.
It's not.
Like
It's not.
I'd sooner be respected than famous, to be honest. Because that's a whole nother thing as well. You can be famous, but that doesn't mean you're
Mm-hmm.
respected. Like in your industry as well. Like that's, I mean, because you sometimes you hear about people, don't you, that are like really famous in their industry. Like let's say a really famous director that you probably never even seen or heard of,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you heard of them, but you just never seen a picture of them
Never
or
seen
something
them.
like
Yeah.
that. Right, yeah. But like everyone in that industry just goes on about them, like actors, writers, sound engineers. Everyone's like this person, amazing, and stuff like hearing stuff like that really kind of changed my opinion and mindset towards these things. Like I'm an aspiring actor. Right? I'm trying to get into the industry, and what I'm learning now more and more is that it really is a craft, and there's a difference between people who are who think they're better than everyone else and go into it with that attitude in
Mm-hmm.
order to kind of, I don't know, assert dominance, I guess. But that's their mentality, I suppose, is to become rich and successful and famous and all that. And then there's everyone else that wants to be an actor because it's what they dreamed of and what they dream of at night, and
Yeah.
it's like I'm always honest about this stuff. Like, would I like to be, rich and have fans and stuff? Of course, who wouldn't want that, right? But what's more important? What is more important for me? It's to get to do what I love for a living. Like, I don't care if it's like,
Yeah.
big Hollywood movies or just small independent movies. Like, if I got to do acting for a living and that was my job, I'd be in heaven. I'd be more than happy with that. I've had people on this show before who are career actors that, have done so many different productions, but you've probably just never heard of them. Some of them maybe, but more or not, you probably haven't. But they're happy. They're
Right.
really happy, and that's what I look at. Like, are you happy with what you're doing? And then success as well. Like I get people in my live stream say this a lot. Like, how do you define success? Because I sometimes will often say I'll be like moody. I'll be like, oh, I'm not a success. I'm going nowhere. And they'll be like, well, you are a success. Depends how you look at success.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It does. It does. It's what's success to you. And to bring up your point as far as just the acting thing and the two sides of the acting part, right? So when I would do a lot of extra work, my whole thing was kind of staying in the background, not really talking, doing what I was supposed to do when somebody would, a director, producer, whoever would say stuff, move here, do all that kind of thing. But I would always listen to everybody around me. And listening to everybody, you could kind of tell, like you just mentioned, the people that are, I'm just trying to be rich and famous, or this is my craft. I actually enjoy this, right? Because you have that one person that's like, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, to assert, like you said, assert dominance, right? Oh, I was on this show, or I was on this show, as I was on this show. And you look at them, and the first thing that always comes to my mind would be, obviously I'm not going to say anything because I'm just listening, but I would think to myself, well, it's funny, you were on all this stuff, but we're all still right here, right now, doing the same extra role, so I get you're trying to show all the things that you've been on, but we're still doing the same thing. But then you have the other person on the other side of it who just sits there, like you said, it's just quiet. You can tell that they're legitimately into it because they're focused on the production. They're focused on what's going on with the director, what the actors are doing, how the actors are portraying themselves, how they carry themselves, how they're handling themselves. And so you see two different sides of that. But, ultimately, success is whatever it is for you,
I will say
right?
this. I agree.
Hmm.
And I've met a lot, I've done plenty of extras work myself, and
Yeah.
people make careers out of that stuff, like for
Yeah.
real.
Oh, yeah.
And
You get into an extra union. Yeah. You get in a career, you're pretty much set.
to put this into context as well for people that aren't familiar, imagine a job where okay, sometimes you have to work like really long days, like 16 hours a day sometimes. But sometimes it will be like, oh, we just need you to sit in the background for like 4 hours and just have coffee and pretend to have a conversation. And we'll provide you free drinks, free food, free everything.
Yes.
Sign me up. Great job, right?
Right,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Because it's all about attitude. And I've seen what you're talking about here in England again, 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 again. But I think that productions don't do themselves or the extras any favors. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
There's been productions I've been on where the crew really, or like whoever, I don't know, production assistants, whoever's in charge of like moving around the actors, right? They'll be like, oh, everyone move, like the lead actors need to be here, you know, like background move out of the way. Da, 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 da. Like they create that divide. They create,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think for certain people, when you hear the word extra, or here they often refer to it as SA, supporting artist. Um, there's already like a stigma attached to it, and
Okay.
I don't think there should be. I mean, yes, you are paid less than the regular crew, and yes, you won't get
Sure.
screen time. You'll just be in the background, but like it's a role that's needed and very important. And sometimes it's really really important. For example, like I did some ADR stuff recently for those who
Okay.
don't know, ADR is basically just um, providing like dubbing for the background of a scene, because
Okay.
often you can't use the audio that was originally recorded, so you have to, you know, it's quite interesting actually. You sit and kind of look at a scene from a show or a movie or whatever, and then you have to kind of guess how the actors would sound and kind of just input conversations in there. I don't know, I found it fascinating, and it was a great paycheck as well, by the way, so please.
See, and
Any,
that's a passion for the industry right there to be able to do that. So
I loved it. It was
good.
so fun. Like I've had a
Yeah.
lot of fun experiences since I've been pursuing this, like acting and voice acting, and that was definitely one of the best. Plus, the
Yeah.
paycheck was amazing, man. Sign me up. Oh.
That's another thing. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's another thing that completely blew my mind in this industry is that how much money just goes around. It's almost like an infinite amount of money. Once you get the right part, it's almost like an infinite amount of money. And you're just like, wait a minute, for 2 hours, I just got paid this for 2 hours?
You know
Really?
what's brilliant is like when you do like a commercial and it's like a really embarrassing one, and they do the buyout, which is really good.
Yeah.
So you get paid, you get the buyout, which is almost like triple what the flat fee is, and then they don't
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah.
It's like yes, yes.
I know. Like I said, I can honestly say that's one thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, when you think of actors and stuff like that, you think of rich, famous, blah 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 blah. But like on a lower level, when you're doing commercials, when you're doing just little things, you're like, wow, there's a lot of money in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
It literally infinite amounts of money in this industry. That people can do. But you know what? One thing I've realized, and I don't know if you've had this too. Um, like anytime you tell somebody, like everybody thinks of actors and actresses, and if you tell somebody, oh, I write or I act
Mm-hmm.
or I sing, they automatically look at you like, oh no, you don't, because you're not rich and famous. If they're not in the industry, they don't understand that just because you might not be rich and famous doesn't mean you still don't act or sing or write. And I've had that so many times where somebody will ask, well, like, what do you do? And I'll tell them, passion projects and things like that. I'll say, but, I like to write, and occasionally I like to, act if the mood, suits me or whatever, I'll get on camera. And then they'll just look, and it may be different here in like in the Midwest area, but in the Midwest area, people just look at you like, uh-huh, okay, whatever. Like it's no, like you're following a dream,
Mm.
but because you're not rich and famous, it kind of means nothing. And I don't know if you have that, or you're probably in
Yeah.
more of a community
No,
with
no, no.
acting. So
I mean, totally, but you'll hear it in a different way.
okay.
Instead of "oh no, you're not," it will be more like, "so what have you been in?" And then you say, so like for example, like my biggest name drop is always like when you want to impress someone, they'd be like, "oh, I was an extra in Tenet." And it's like, oh wow,
Okay.
that sounds so big, right? That's such a big deal. Not really.
Right,
I
exactly.
it was cool. Don't get me wrong. It was a fun
Yeah.
experience. I got to, I was within probably a foot of Christopher Nolan, and I got to see his whole process, and that was interesting. But it was also 16 hours a day for 4 weeks,
Yeah.
standing around doing nothing.
Hmm.
It's extras work is not easy.
Yeah.
And then quickly, you kind of realize that, oh, okay, this is the industry. This, it's a
Mhm.
lot of this, and um, there's things you learn as well. Extras work makes me laugh because, like, when you first get into the industry and you've never done it before,
Yeah.
and they try, like, you should always get paid for extras work. I'll just say this now:
Right.
you should always get paid. But sometimes they'll try not to pay you, and they tried to do this with this production initially, but then they eventually had to pay people. But they were like,
Or a
"Oh,
huge production like Tenet.
initially it was advertised that way. So you have to understand that, like, in the country we were in a country called Estonia. So it was
Okay.
filmed in a lot of different areas, and this particular movie was like a collaboration between an Estonian agency and then like American British agency that were working together. And initially
Okay.
it said something like, "Oh, um, I love this. I've seen this in so many adverts for like movies and TV shows. You'll get paid in exposure."
Ha.
Which,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. If I was offered like a part in a feature film tomorrow, and I wasn't going to get paid for it, but I know it's going to be on, say, like Amazon Prime or something, I'm down for it. Let's do it, right?
Mhm.
Because if nothing else, I can use it for my reel or something. It's
Right.
something, right? And I'll learn, and it's an opportunity to act on screen.
Mhm.
But when it's extras work, I mean, more often than not, you're not even seen, and if you are, it's for like a
Mhm.
second, and like you're not the focal point, and it's so really, why do extras work? Well, the money, the
Right.
experience. Sometimes it's interesting. I mean, if you get to be like in Star Wars as a clone trooper or something, then it's going to be fun, isn't it?
Sure.
Or like a Viking movie or something. And then also like the connections, who you meet. Like that's whenever I'm deciding on whether or not to do a project,
Mhm.
it's always like money, connections, filming opportunity. Like I try to weigh these things up and see if it's worth it or not, and base my
Sure.
decision on that. But yeah, bringing it back to the original point, outsiders looking in, it's what's the biggest thing you've been in? What would I know? Oh, okay, you've not been in anything. Oh, okay. Or
Right. Exactly.
like, and this, I've got people I know that say this to me. They'll say something like, "Oh, that's a nice hobby."
Yeah.
Ah,
Exactly.
it's like ripping my heart out, man. But
They
but
don't understand that
but
there are steps to get to where you are
well,
trying to go.
to be fair, they don't necessarily know that it's my passion and what I'm trying to do in life. But I think um, different people have different mentalities of these things. Like acting is, and I knew this before going in. Like I knew this. I remember working when I was a lot younger in like supermarkets and stuff, and I knew people that were actors that were trying to break into the industry, and they've been doing it for years, and it was really hard and
Right.
thankless. And they were very like, I remember one guy I met. He was this really flamboyant gay dude that was just like a bundle of joy, like really nice guy, fun. He used to do like pantos and stuff.
Yeah.
And we would talk about acting every once in a while, and he would just it was kind of like a bittersweet thing. Like he would be like, "Oh, it's hard, and I get to do these pantos and stuff." But you could tell there was a bit of like his dream is dying in his voice. Like he was
Mm.
trying, but it just wasn't working out. But he was putting his heart and soul into it, and that kind of made me realize like this dream that we have of getting into this industry and doing this for a living is a lot about luck. It's hard work, but it's. I mean, people always call it catching your lucky break, don't they?
They do.
But
They do.
that's the thing. There's so many factors to this, like getting representation, being cast in something big. I mean, sometimes as well, it will be a situation where you'll get cast for a while, and then it's kind of nothing after that. Like for example, I was watching this old movie with a housemate of mine. He's a big movie buff, right? We sit and watch movies every once in a while. It's awesome. And we were watching like a Tim Robbins movie. It's a really, really good
Okay.
movie. If no one's seen it, go check it out. It's called Jacob's Ladder. I think it was released in like
Yeah.
early 90s. You've seen it, yeah? Really, really good. And obviously that was released maybe a year or two or around the same time as The Shawshank Redemption, which is arguably the biggest movie that Tim Robbins is known for. Point is, anyway, he was around that time, off the back of that movie, he got loads of roles for the next 5 years.
Mhm.
And that's quite common for most actors. You get your big break and then you get a bunch of roles after
And
that.
you just keep going and keep going and keep going. Momentum, momentum, momentum. Yep.
Right. And you want to keep pushing it forward, keep your name out there. Not
Because you
to
know what can happen
right.
if you go under.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think look, why do you do a job? You do a job to make money, to support
Right.
your family, to support you to keep going, right? In acting, you've got this opportunity potentially to make millions, which would set you up for life.
Right.
But it's not all about money. It's about the passion and the craft.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you make your millions, but you want to keep doing this. I mean, that explains why so many actors continue to do it to this day, even though they made their millions probably like 20, 30 odd
Right.
years ago. They do it for the
Even if it's
passion.
small parts, just cameos, even if they just
Sure.
appear for 2 seconds, or like
Mm-hmm.
what was Bill Murray?
Right.
You know, you're gonna see Bill Murray and he's making cameos. He's not gonna, he might not necessarily be in a full out movie, maybe here and there if he feels like it, but he's mostly making cameos.
I,
Although his last movie was pretty good. The last one I saw, there was one about zombies or something like that. That was actually
yeah,
pretty.
it's good to see him on screen for more than 5 minutes. It's
It
like, yeah,
is.
man, you forget, don't you? How, but I think for a guy like Bill Murray, I mean, I don't know him specifically if this is how he
Yeah.
feels, but I know that there's probably a lot of actors out there that maybe they just lost their interest. Like you do something for a long time, and then you can sometimes fall out of love with things. Like with me and music, I adore music. I've been a musician my whole life, but
Yeah.
when I was growing up, that was the only thing I ever wanted to do, and I pursued it, and I tried to get that goal, and I did it for many years, and
Sure.
then I gave up on that dream, and years later, I'm writing music again, and I play regularly, but I don't want to be a full-time musician anymore.
Okay.
Like
Acting.
I
You like acting better.
Yeah, well, I fell in love with acting. That was a passion that
Okay.
came later in life, but they're very similar. That's I
Mm-hmm.
kind of realized that acting is very similar to music in many ways, particularly from the kind of performance perspective.
Okay.
Um, but I guess my point is I don't have the same passion for music that I once did, and so I understand that like time and life experience can make you not necessarily fall out of love for things, but like feel differently about them.
Mm-hmm.
Time changes a person, and experiences change a
Absolutely.
person, and yeah,
Absolutely. And then
right,
naturally you're just gonna go towards where you want to go to, and like you said, music, you loved music and you did music, and then acting, you start acting, you're like, oh, I like this. This is my passion. And so you kind of grew out of that. But the music aspect of it is still in you. It's
sure,
just the acting love has overtaken that for now. And who knows, in a
yeah.
couple more years, you might be back to the music thing where you're like, okay, acting's cool, but now I love music. Like, you never know, because you just grow, you keep growing as a person.
I honestly would love to. I mean, I can't. That's a problem with me in my life is I can't decide what I want to do, so I just try and do everything.
Jack of
But
all
yeah,
trades, master of none.
but let's bring it back to you, man. Like, okay, so you want to be a professional writer. What kind of other works have you worked on? You said you've done acting. Like, lay us a kind of a breakdown of Ryan Keefe, the man, the myth, the legend. Like, what have you done so far, and
Okay.
what have you learned?
So, what I've done so far, dramatizations. This is on my acting side. This is on my acting side. Just breaking into the industry. A lot of extra work because, like you said, I didn't know at first, right? So just get into
Oh,
the extra. Just just get into the bottom. Just get into the bottom one. So like I said, a lot of extra work. I was fortunate enough, like I said, living in North Hollywood to where I would get booked on, quite a few things. And of course I didn't tell anybody because everybody in North Hollywood, California is an actor. So of course I didn't tell anybody, right? Um, Commercials. So I've done a few commercials with my cat,
oh, cool.
a few delivery commercials. I'm actually on the editing side right now, like we were talking about going behind the camera. I'm on the editing side. We're editing for a movie that we just submitted to a few film festivals in Florida called Hey Bro. And that is with, like I said, one of the guys that I work with regularly. He's putting together his own movie. And so, just trying to get a team together. And then right now, just focusing on the show and trying to see which direction I want to take it in. So everybody that gives me criticism, like you said, if I can make it more believable, if I can pick stories out from, real life and, that kind of thing, it would sound more believable. So just taking criticism and just trying to launch it to see how far it can go.
Mm.
That's basically it. I don't necessarily I have a goal, obviously, of wanting to be a writer, but I don't necessarily
Okay.
say, okay, I have to do this. I have to do this. Like I'm just going piece by piece and just letting the chips fall where they may, you know?
So you're looking for like to create just like feature films and series stuff like that, or do you want to kind of branch out, do other mediums, maybe documentaries? Like what were you looking
Yeah,
to create?
I'm thinking series. I
Okay.
like series. Like I'm fascinated with the court, the court system and things like that. Like I don't know what it is, and just something fascinates me about the whole judicial system. But like I said, I wanted to make it short because I know everyone has no attention span anymore, right?
Well,
So
see, I partially disagree with you here. Like,
okay,
I,
okay,
I think I think you're right, but it's different mediums. For
okay,
example, like okay, I got a bit of a following on TikTok on a few channels, right?
yeah,
And there's a lot of people that love these short form videos, right?
okay,
But I know a lot of those people will never be interested in listening to a whole podcast, right? But then there's a subset of those people that will come over and will listen to the podcasts because they
right.
love podcasts and they love different forms of media. There's still a big love for film and TV shows and stuff like that, man. But it's just different types of people, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
and I get what you mean. I think, okay, if we're talking about the younger generation in general, people growing up,
yeah,
like what are the things that they're more into? Yeah, there's going to be a lower attention span and stuff, but that doesn't account for everyone. It's just,
true.
different types of people and different interests and stuff. But um,
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like film and TV shows and cinema series will never die.
they won't.
It's just they there's just new forms of media that have entered the scene now, isn't there? There's short form and there's long form.
Yeah, and I think and you're right, and that's what I try to kind of model the show after, just watching how all the bigger productions do it. Like for example, on YouTube, when you're looking at like these court shows on YouTube, they're usually in maybe 10-minute snippets, right? 10-11 minute snippets, and whole case is basically done in 10-11 minutes. And so that's kind of what I wanted to model it after, because it doesn't need to be fully drawn out. You get the gist of it, and that's basically it. Because I know that demographic that's watching those court shows, they may not sit there for 45 minutes while we go through the whole creation of Jesus Christ, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm watching this because I'm at work and I need something to take my mind off of work. So 10-11 minutes, that's it. Just an in and out kind of thing. No one wants, my demographic, or the demographic I should say that I'm shooting for, doesn't necessarily want to sit there for at 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Does that kind of make sense?
Sure, but what do you make of like, let's say, science fiction shows like yeah, Daredevil, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, these kind of shows where they'll take law and the aspects of what you're talking about, but then
Yeah.
kind of use it as a backdrop for other things. Like, do you think you'd be interested in that? What do you make of that as well? Like their usage of real life law and terms and terminology and the presentation of that.
You know, I I'm trying to think. Like I like it. My only thing was, and I think this was just growing up, um, I've always had like a different shows that are normal have never really intrigued me. If that makes sense, shows that are
Define
like,
normal.
um, okay, like you said, like you mentioned, like a She-Hulk or so, like serious-ish type shows,
Okay.
like those never really intrigued me. Like I always liked shows that went outside of the box, that weren't your traditional show, like F is for Family, something like that, or something like the other show on Netflix with the monsters and the hormone monsters and things like that, where it's just completely crazy. Like I like those kind of shows, and South Park, obviously, right? Like I like those kind of shows, like just the obscene stuff. And so that's where a lot of my writing comes from. And that's where, again, the motivation from like going court shows to try to make them a little bit more out there, That's where it goes. So and obviously I would love to write and learn from some of the best writers in the industry, but I want to get on something similar to where I can kind of just let my mind go, where it's not like, okay, I can't say this because it's on network TV. I can't say this because it's on, but at the same time, I want to learn. So it's how you're constantly battling with yourself, right? You're constantly battling. You're like, do I go this way or do I go that way? And I think that's where it came for me, just trying to figure out which way. Do I want to go the normal way or do I want to go the completely weird way where this isn't going to have maybe a lot of fans, but it'll have a niche audience. It'll have.
That's a really good point. I've never thought about that. It's, yeah, having an audience of any type is key. One thing I've been trying to do more and more, say with this podcast, is be very grateful and to the few people that do listen to it. Like, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Because that is a small niche of people. I don't. The fact of the matter is, I don't have millions of people listening and watching this podcast, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because there's at least a handful of people, maybe 5 people that are listening and watching it, and those people are engaged in it, and they look forward to it, and they're, just engaged in it. And I think that's really important. And it kind of goes back to our conversation before about, just doing things because you love them and also having a passion for them. Like,
that's exactly what it
is. And I think, because I've been told, like, the way that I approach things is unorthodox and not always the right way. And I agree. I'm very stubborn as a human being.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm honest. It's a flaw of mine. I kind of have to do things my way, and I will try to follow the rules to some extent, but I'm so stubborn. I hate
outside the box. You're doing it your way. I get it.
Well, no, I just don't like being told what to do. I don't know, man. Like, I can't do the 9 to 5 because I can't have a boss. It just bugs me. I can have a okay. Real talk. Like, if I'm working with a director, right?
Yeah.
And I said, one of the first things I normally say is, "Hey, are you open to collaboration, or are you kind of more just like call the shot?" And almost every director I think I've ever worked with has always been very like, no, throw ideas. Let me know what you want. And I'm like, cool. Not because I want to change the show. I want to make it better. I want to make this as believable as possible. And so I'll throw ideas. Sometimes even just something as simple as like, what if we were to just do this particular camera shot? What do you think of that?
I got you.
Just little thing like, let's tweak this. What about this? What if the character would say it this way? Like, I want it to be as good as possible because that's what I believe in, the vision. That because acting, at least from a visual perspective, like visual acting is a visual medium. So it's all about the shot. And like, for instance, I was watching. I've been catching up on all those Marvel series from from 2015 to 2017, right? And one of the things that I noticed in particular is that visually, each one of the shows has a different way that they've shot it. They've all got like something in common, but in particular, like Luke Cage, for example, I love the visuals in Luke Cage. Sometimes like something as simple as like they'll be in the club scenes at the top of. Have you seen Luke Cage, by the way?
I have, yes.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
yes.
So
I'm following you.
Right. So like in the club scenes at the top of the place, when you've got the Biggie Smalls portrait in the background, and it'll always be behind a troubled villain character. So it'd be like I can't remember their names now. That escapes me. But it's kind of like it's like a metaphor. It's like they've done that visually on purpose to kind of imply certain things. But even just like
a little Easter egg,
right. But also like their choice of color is interesting. Like they use like rich tones of like gold and stuff. There's like this golden kind of sepia tone about it, which is almost like, I don't know, like reminiscent Motown 70s music. I don't know. It's got that kind of like vibe, because obviously one of the background things with Luke Cage is it's trying to kind of like talk about the struggle of the black person and growing up in Harlem, and what that can be over time, right? But it's also got its own visual look. And then if you watch, say, will be something different. If like Jessica Jones is more kind of going for that PI kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more kind of like blue tones used, like kind of gritty blue, dark like tones. I can't really explain, but you know what I mean, right? It's like
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I
And
love it.
it's stuff that you notice when you're in the industry, right? It's stuff
Sure.
that you notice because you're paying attention to it, right? More so than just say a normal person that's just sitting there watching a TV show. And that's another thing that I've brought up, like, since getting into the industry and focusing more, and focusing, okay, the acting is fine, whatever, but looking at the background behind the acting,
Mm.
like, oh, they put that in there. Oh, that was kind of cool. And you start looking at different things, right? You're not looking so much of a surface aspect of it. You're looking more so of, oh, okay, colors are different. Oh, okay, that person in the background, extra or whatever. Okay, I saw them in another scene, so they messed up on the continuity. You know what I mean? You start looking
Oh,
at,
that shit bugs me, man, when they do that.
yeah,
It
you
sucks
start
me
looking
right
at
out.
different things once you're in the industry, and it's like, oh crap, I wish I could just watch somebody enjoy their acting and then just be done and turn it off in 30 minutes or an hour. But it's like, oh, now I'm looking at the lights, now I'm looking at the people in the background, now I'm looking at how they said this line, now I'm looking at how they did this, and you're picking up tips, and you're just trying to, I wonder how they did that, and just so much more analyzation once you've seen it up close. You're like, okay, what's going on in these people's minds? How are they doing this?
I hate it
You
when you've
know?
got like a show where that's got really good actors, but then there's like a supporting actor that sucks.
Right.
And like it happened in Daredevil. I won't give it away, but there's a particular episode, right, where everyone is brilliant, and then there's this particular guy that's in there who's a supporting character. He's only in it for like a few episodes, but
Yeah.
his acting was so trash, and I was like, what? Oh, it just ruins the whole scene. Like, no, please, just have him. He was better when he was a mute. Please, no more dialogue. Like, come on. But I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the ability to suspend your disbelief. That's so important in acting, and little things like making mistakes, like in Game of Thrones, where they left the coffee cup on the fucking side. Like,
Yeah.
you make mistakes, but when it's like just bad act, I don't think there's ever any excuse for bad acting, or like just things like really distracting lighting, or something distracting. Like, okay, we're talking about extras, right?
Right.
You've got to keep your extras in check. Like, I saw something on TikTok about 2 years ago during the pandemic. It was an old period drama created in the UK. I don't know, something to the Crown. Maybe it was the Crown, the series. I don't
Yeah.
know. But anyway, there was this guy who was an extra in one of the scenes, and he made a point of showing the clip of him basically breaking the fourth wall. So he kind of looks back and then looks directly at the camera and
Oh.
smiles and then looks away. And so he milked this online, and a lot of people found it funny and stuff, and he had little 5 minutes of fame. But then a lot more people were saying, well, you've just kind of completely destroyed your chances at a career, because now they're going to see this and they're going to be like, oh, that was a mistake. Who knows? Maybe they even cut the scene out, but they're not going to want to work with you again.
A
No one.
purpose, a mistake done on purpose.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
so
don't.
that's what makes it even worse, is that he was trying to do it on purpose. And because when you're an extra, that's one of the first things that they always tell you is, number one, never look at the camera, never look at the actors, never, unless an actor is going to engage with you,
Mm-hmm.
you don't go up to an actor and say anything like, hey, I saw you in it, hey, can I have your autograph? Like, your starstruckness has to be null and void. Like, you just are doing what you're supposed to do, head down, and then you go back into your little area and go get some snacks. That's right, and that's what they tell you. And you'll work 16-hour days, and you're gonna love it, because you're gonna get, that's what they
Well,
tell you. And
I'll say this though, like, and I'm sure you've got the same experience too, where like
yeah,
every production is different when it comes to extras work. Like, some
yeah,
places will treat you really well, and some people will
mm-hmm.
treat you like trash. And there's
Yeah,
no in between. Like, it's either really good or really trash, and it's funny. It really is. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't ever really get over that divide thing we were talking about earlier. Like, um, because
yeah,
some actors have like really bad egos, and some are like really sweet. Like, I remember, and I think I've said this on the show before, but when I was in Tenet, I remember I
Yeah.
was being moved from one scene to another, or one location to another, and we were about to do another scene. And there was like a little mini trailer on set that I don't know. I just assumed it was just a crew one. I don't know. Like it was away from the area where all the rest of the people's trailers were. So whatever.
Sure.
And the actress, I think her name's Elizabeth Debicki. She's a really
Okay.
tall actress. She's about probably like 6'5", very, very stunningly beautiful woman, like just visually striking, right? And imagine
Okay.
like we're all in a single file line. It's like school. We're just being like pushed to go somewhere very slowly. And she comes out of her trailer and she looks directly at me in the eyes. And I look at her and I smile and she smiles back. And I was just like, right on. I just kept walking on. I was like, that was surreal.
Yeah.
But not like starstruck or anything, just kind of like
Yeah.
a surreal moment. But like she was really down to earth. But I have seen that where like main actors have had a bit of an ego, like, oh, I'm not sitting with the commoners.
Yeah.
I'm the main cast. I'm above you.
Yeah. 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 I mean, heck, you see that with extras and other background.
I know,
You
I
know
know,
what I
I know,
mean?
I know. It's so hilarious when people get there.
You
Oh,
see that with extras and other background characters where they, people where they don't want to, talk to you or whatever, or they walk in like, yeah, I know we're all non-union, but I'm better non-union than you. You're just like, what?
there was a shoot I was on a while back where
Yeah.
there was a guy walking around with his hand in his pockets, kind of blasé. Like he just looked like an assuming guy, like quite nice, I guess. I don't know. And we got into
Sure.
we got into a little group and we were all talking just casually,
Yeah.
waiting for another scene. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I do these all the time. Yeah, doing a project tomorrow, about 100K. Like he's just like, oh, I'll take it or leave it. Like kind of trying to show off. And the guy next
Mm-hmm.
to me is like defending him, like, oh yeah, no, he's lovely. This guy's great. And I'm sitting there thinking in my head, I'm like, is he? Isn't it? This just comes across very, very like shitty. Like I can't
Yeah.
even if I was a big successful actor, I don't know that I would ever feel comfortable. Like I call it big leaguing. That's what I call it. When you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
just walking around like, oh yeah, I've been in this and this and this. What have you been in? It's like it's very low, man. I don't know.
It is, but I think in that point, there's something to be said. You know how they say, well, if you're like rich or if you're famous or if you're smart or if you're whatever, you don't have to tell people. People just know. I think that's where it comes down to. Part of it is that you don't have to brag about what you've done if you're legit. Because what is that going to do? Okay, so I go onto a shoot. I go onto a set and I talk to you and I'm like, oh yeah, I was in. Okay, I was in She-Hulk yesterday. Okay, and you know what I mean? Like, all right, what do you? That doesn't do anything. Like, what does that do for us? We're both on the exact same shoot, getting the exact same money. So what is that? That does nothing. And so I never understood that. Also, where people will go and say, "Oh, I did this, I did that, I did this." Okay, I mean, congratulations, I guess, right?
I don't understand why it's so difficult for people to just be humble. Like at the end of the day, even if you do become a big deal, like you're still a human being. You still
Sure,
piss, eat, shit, sleep. Like what makes you better
sure,
than anyone else? Like everyone's the same. It's just different. Like don't get me wrong, you've worked hard to get to where you are, and you've had your opportunity
right.
and everything, and that should should be respected. But at the same time, it's like you know, I don't know that it's ever a noble thing to brag and be like, I did this, I did this. Isn't this wonderful? Like I don't know. I've never liked that kind of behavior. All my life, I've always kind of been violently opposed to that. Like I like when I
Violently.
well,
Okay.
okay, like for instance,
Violently opposed.
no,
Like
maybe
you
that's
hear
the
somebody
wrong
that
way.
brags and you're just like, okay, I need to hit them in the
Shut
face
the
with a brick. Right? Exactly.
no, but like okay, like
Violently opposed.
that instance I gave as an example earlier, where the guy was like bragging, I just walked away.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't want to sit and listen to this. I'm gonna talk to someone else over there that's like a halfway decent
Quiet.
person.
Yeah.
No,
You know,
I don't know, man. I don't get that.
yeah.
In life in general, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, forget the entertainment industry. Just in general, what positives are there to bragging about
There, there.
stuff?
I guess it makes you feel good. I mean, I guess it makes the person feel good. But one thing I was going to bring up, and before I forget, was the engagement thing that you were talking about earlier. You mentioned how, you said there are like 5 people or, a handful of people or whatever that, enjoy your show and things like that. And that's one thing I can honestly say that is a huge inspiration to keep going also,
Absolutely.
right? Because, as you mentioned, okay, you might not have a million people, okay? You might not have a gajillion followers and a billion and all this kind of stuff. But the few people that you do have that that are excited to watch your podcast, to listen to your podcast, that makes you wake up and say, okay, you know what? I was going to give this up, but such and such, you know what I mean? Like this, I like the fact that they want it,
I had a moment like that about a year ago.
Yeah.
I was considering giving up the show. Same as you, I've been doing it for 2 years, and I'm very transparent with my audience online. Like, I'll tell them if I'm not happy about things or if I'm happy about things, and I always try to be grateful for everything that I have.
Okay.
And I'm thankful, but occasionally, look, I'm a human being. Sometimes I moan, I'll get frustrated, I'll be like, "Why is this not going anywhere?" Right?
Sure.
But yeah, what happened was there was kind of the views and the listens took a drop, like a significant drop, and then there was just no kind of engagement at all, like no comments, nothing. And I kind of then thought that, oh, okay, so I guess it's just kind of like morbid curiosity, like people, there's not really an audience there, because it was very erratic. Like if it had been like 10 at one point about a year or two ago, it was like 20 people every time, and I was like, oh great, this is like, okay, say for a few, let's say there's about like 10, 15 people definitely watching every single time, amazing, right? But then it drops off and tapers off, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong, because then you point fingers at yourself. You're like, well, what am I doing wrong? What can I do to make it better? And then I kind of thought, like, maybe I'm just not good at this. Maybe this just sucks. This is just not interesting. Maybe I should give this up. And then people, I started talking about that online. I was like, oh, my feelings. And then a few people were chimed in like, oh, I love this, and I love this episode, and this was really good. And I was like, oh, this got me this. And I've said this before on this show, so sorry for, I don't know how many times I said that as well. Sorry. But yeah, people telling me that that something got them through a hard time or something, and that's when it started being like quite real. I was like, oh, okay, this is a reason to keep going, because it gives other people like hope, motivation, entertainment, even if it's just like a laugh or it's a bit of fun for like 20 minutes or an hour or whatever the case may be. Like that's worth something. That to me is worth the world. So who cares if it doesn't get like 1,000 views, million views? Like those 5 people that are checking it out, thank you so much. You rock, and I'll keep going for you. So there you go.
That's what, and that's exactly what it is. It's just, I think, and I'm just speaking from experience, but I think that we're similar in a way that, I think actors in general, anybody that wants to be in the industry, I think there's going to be a time where you're contemplating giving up, maybe because things aren't going as quickly as you think they should, or just something kind of takes you're just like, oh man, maybe I'm, like you said, maybe I'm just not good at this. Maybe I need to try something new. And I think when there is something that boosts you back up, that lets you know that you're on the right path, right? Something that says, okay, I'm at my lowest right now. I have no ideas. Nobody's watching this. I suck. But then when something comes and puts you right back on the, okay, maybe I can do this. I think that's kind of, I don't know, karma or the world or just something, whatever, kind of telling you like, this is your path. This is where you need to go, and this is where you need to be. It's going to be hard, right? It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to come like overnight, but you're okay. You're okay. Just keep going. And I use that a lot too, to where, there was a time, maybe 2 months, I didn't write anything because mentally I was just like, I have nothing. I have nothing. I have no ideas. No one cares. This is just too weird. This is just too out there to not be a huge production, right? If it was like a huge production on like a Netflix, people would love it. Oh my God. But I was like, maybe this is just too out there. But then, like you said, a few people would come to me and say, hey, this was kind of funny, or this was kind of stupid. Or if my mom says, oh, this made me laugh, I'd be like, okay, well, I guess it's time to turn back on some court shows and make these, and make these cases as weird as possible. Or your friends do the same thing, or people online do the same thing. And you're like, hey, I needed this to get through my day. or I needed this to get through something I was going on, that was going on in my life. And this helped me get my mind off of the issues that I was having, even if it is for 30 minutes, an hour, however long, but it helped them to not focus on life. And I think when we get to that point, as entertainers, I think when we get to that point, it is more of a passion as opposed to I'm doing it for money. You're doing it for the right reasons now. You're doing it for people and for yourself. And I think that's huge. And that's what'll keep you going, to be genuinely passionate.
I will say this, like for me, when it comes to acting, I want to make that a career and I want to earn money from it. But with the podcast, I don't necessarily care about it making money, but I do want it to reach people.
Right.
Because I feel like every episode has something to offer. I truly believe that. Every time I walk away from it, I walk away inspired. I was really looking forward to today's episode. I was like, oh, it's going to be really fun. And, I was trying to get, this is why I was late, by the way. I was at the gym and I was trying to quickly get in and come down and do the episode. And I'd done a live stream earlier in the day where I'd spoken about, like, this, going to be doing this. So I was like really excited for it. And then I get to do it. And then it's every time, same feeling. I'm like, yeah, this is inspiring. I love doing this. I always get something out of it. You get to talk to people as well. Have a conversation with someone from across the pond, somewhere in a different part of the world, and just connect with them and share stories. I had no idea, for instance, that we would talk so much about acting in the entertainment industry. That's a surprise, but a welcome one. And it's made for a really, really good show. And it's like, that's kind of the excitement in the podcasting world, is the unknown and how you keep going forward. And I feel like with your show as well, it'll be the same thing. You keep going and going. I'm sure in the last 2 years, you've seen certain changes, either things you've tweaked or things that have just changed over time through repetition.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, the first, so it's on season 4 now. And the first season, so one thing that I think inspired me in the very, 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 very beginning was something that I heard one of the Simpsons creators say. And they said that, and the gentleman said that, put it out there. Because his whole thing was, when the Simpsons first came out, it was horrible, right? He said the illustrations were bad, the cartoons looked horrible, the writing was like, kind of iffy. He said, but they put it out there, and then it kept growing and getting better and better. And then once you put it out there, you can see what you need to tweak, right? Because it's out there now. It's not just in your mind, because you're not going to just come up with something, an idea, put it out there and it'd be perfect in the beginning, right? It's not going to be perfect. You're going to have to see it, tweak it. And I think that's one thing, like you mentioned, like with the show, the first 2 seasons, the writing was, a little weird and it didn't, there was nothing basically to it, but it was putting it out there so that way it can be tweaked. And then by the third season, there was an intro. It was more, I don't know, I think I had everything outlined a little bit better. And then by season 4, it's completely different, where things are outlined. Everybody is basically on the same like kind of thing, with the exception of the type of story that it is, but everybody has pretty much the same outline of how they're going to talk, how they're going to do it. We have an intro now. I mean, it's growing, but it wasn't, season 1. And like you said, every time you look at your art, your work, you're like, okay, I need to fix that. I need to fix that. I need to fix that. I need to change that. I can tweak that. And I think that's part of the fun about it too. That's part of the fun part of the process, is that there's always something you can change, always something you can tweak, always something that you can learn, because it's ever changing and it's art and it's always changing, which is one of the best things about this whole industry. You never know what's going to hit. You just have to keep changing it and trying new things, right?
This is what I needed to hear today. Oh man. Okay, a couple of quickfire questions, a bunch of different quickfire questions for you. Just
all right,
hitting you, throwing these out there. What have been the biggest lessons you've learned from acting so far?
I think it's stay humble. stay humble and stay grateful. And here's why though. And I know that ties into
Mm-hmm.
like kind of what we were talking about. Coincidentally, it does, right? It ties into what we were just talking about. And it's because I noticed that I was fortunate enough to get, a lot of like extra roles and things like that, uh, for not even wanting, not, I don't want to say not wanting to be, but for not knowing anything about the industry.
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to get, like I said, a lot of roles and things like that. And I had no idea. And so anytime I would get a role, it would be, oh, I'm just grateful to get this role. Like, I'm just happy to get, it was never like, oh, I got this, look at me, I'm going to post it on Facebook and whatever and tell everybody, it was just like, oh, okay, cool. But then I also noticed people that have been doing it for so many years, like acting for so many years, and they've let their ego get ahead of them to where, oh, I'm not going to take this part because it might be paid, but it's not enough for me.
Mm.
Right. And mind you, these are just extras. These are just background. I'm not talking about like actors, but even some like, kind of lower level actors, same thing. Once they get into something, they have a tendency to think now they're a little bit higher than they are. So now I won't take this role because it doesn't pay enough. Now I won't take this role because of dot, dot, dot. But then I noticed the people that were humble that were always just like, yeah, I'll take it. I don't care. Like Danny Trejo, look at all the movies that he's in. He plays in some crazy movies from, Hollywood blockbuster, amazing Quentin Tarantino movies to movies that you might just see on like Tubi that you're like, wait, what? He did this in, you're like, and it's some like sci-fi asylum type movie. And you're just like, what? I think having that mentality where, yeah, I'll just take it as long as everybody's cool. I'll take it. I think that gets you a lot further than just being I'm better than everybody. So that's one thing and that's actually gone over into real life too. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from acting and from being in this entertainment industry.
Fantastic. What are the biggest lessons you've learned from writing?
Anything can be changed.
Yeah. Okay.
anything anything can be changed and tweaked, and nothing is permanent.
Okay.
And I think that comes from, say, like writing a full script and then going back and being like, okay, well, now that this full script is written, I can have this part tie into this part to give it a little bit more depth or a little bit more detail. um yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest things from writing, and to not be afraid to write, right? Not be afraid to put your thoughts on paper. Not keeping the creativity inside of you.
Mm.
Because like you said, even if a million people don't listen, follow, whatever, this is still your, in a way, truth, right? This is still your creativity coming out. And this is still you putting it out there. Whether it is crazy, people don't like it, it doesn't matter. It's something that's inside of you that you have the itch for, the knack for. You just have to put it out there. It sucks, big deal. You put it out there. Nobody can fault you for that because you tried. You did it, versus that guy that's sitting inside of an office and he's got so many ideas, but he's just like, oh, I'm just going to work for a pension. I don't care about this creativity stuff. Like, we're out there doing it. So
Yeah.
it's just so much stuff, that you learn. And I was that guy. Growing up, I did finance. Like, that was my background. My background has always been finance, numbers, stocks. That's my background, credit. But you get into this industry and your mind just expands so much. There's like so much more. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest lessons I've learned from writing is just to expand your mind, you know?
Brilliant stuff. And now I've got to ask you, since you shared that,
Sure.
can you share some stories from your finance days? Anything crazy you experienced or out there?
So I used to work for a car dealership. Absolutely. So I used to work for a car dealership, and we would, I had this one manager. He's an amazing manager. He used to make money. He used to attempt to make money on literally everybody. And I don't mean maybe a couple $100s. I'm talking about thousands of dollars, thousands of dollars. And I remember one young lady came in to the dealership and she bought a Mazda. And the whole time we were telling her, she was on the phone with her boyfriend or on the phone with her husband or something. And she's like, hey, can you come down here to just go over the numbers, make sure everything is okay? He wouldn't do it. So, okay. So she signs papers, all that kind of stuff. Turns out that it was like a $11,000 profit because she didn't pay attention. You know, she just didn't know. She was asking him to come down the whole time. $11,000. The next day, me and the manager who had done the whole deal, we're both off. Her boyfriend or husband comes back in and with a Red Bull can hits my general manager in the head with a Red Bull can because his wife was basically now in debt for the next 84 months. So he's upset, or girlfriend, whatever. He's upset, hits her with, and then just takes off and just runs. And now everyone else in the dealership is either like hiding under the desk. My other sales manager, he's in the back doing something else. And like I said, guy just takes off and runs. And this was somewhere around Easter or whatever. That was probably one of the craziest. And again, me nor the other manager that actually did the deal was there. And in fact, the general manager who got hit in the head with a Red Bull can before he left the day before said, make sure you take care of her because she's like family. And so we did. Yeah. So yeah, but he ended up going to jail and all that kind of stuff. So it
Preferring a
kind of
Red
worked
Bull
out.
can? Damn.
Yeah, well, I mean, he assaulted my general manager in the head, so
For
kind of.
real? He went to prison for that?
Yeah, I mean, only for like a couple of days, not like prison, just like
Oh, jail.
jail, like lockup. Yeah, just like lockup or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, that was we had some fun.
Damn, man.
Yeah, we definitely had some fun times. But again, that was the 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 because it was car business. That was like the 9 to 9 thing, and then I learned about this business, and then once you get hooked into this business, it's hard to come out. No matter what you try, it's always in the back of your mind, and you're always just like, oh, I miss it, you
Got,
know.
you got any crazy customer service stories?
No more than usual, to be honest with you. Call somebody on the phone, they curse you out, or they tell you that put something in their, normal, just normal stuff. And then mentally, you just kind of check out. You start thinking about food or what you're going to eat the next day. You just kind of check out while they're laughing or cursing at you. And then you get back on the phone and it's kind of stopped, and they're like, "Well, did you hear anything I said?" You're like, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh." And then, whatever. So yeah, nothing too crazy. Like I said, my most interesting stories were in the car business for sure. We're definitely car business because that's a yeah. Well, yeah, and actually, let me ask you a question. What have you learned from everything from your entertainment dealings?
God damn, flipping the script on me.
Yeah.
um, hmm.
That's a good question. That's a good question that you had.
There's a lot of things I've learned. Hmm.
Well,
I
we'll
think
say, what's one that you take in your regular life now?
again,
A lot of
this is thrown me. Biggest lesson I've learned from the entertainment industry. To be honest, the only thing that's coming to mind is what you said is just like keeping your ego in check. I think. Not that I had a particularly big ego before. Like I believe in myself. Don't get me wrong. I think it's important to have confidence and stuff. But
Of course.
time and time again, I've seen what you've seen and experienced what you've seen, which is just people like I said this before on the show. I don't know if I don't know if I've actually said this on the show before. Maybe I have. I did an audition fairly recently, and there was a guy there who just didn't bother saying hello, didn't even acknowledge me or the guy I was with, and I kind of looked at that like, okay, so some like what it was teaching me is that some people have like really bad attitudes in the industry, and then there's everyone else that it
Right.
doesn't have that attitude. But depending on what the production is and who you're working with, sometimes that person might be like really important. They might be like a director or the lead actor, and then that makes it more difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing you kind of really do is focus on what you're doing and your attitude and how
Right.
you treat people. Like, don't worry about how they're treating people, worry about what you're doing. And I feel like, it's funny. I feel
Mm.
like everything that I've learned in the past year or 2 years is preparing me for like the eventual day when I become a big success or
Yes.
whatever. so that I know how to act properly.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's not even like it's like, for example, knowing how to treat fans. I've seen so
Mhm.
many instances of people online, and I've had bad experiences of celebrities myself, which makes me just never want to meet them because I've just only had
Okay.
bad experience. Well, it's I don't want to. They say never meet your heroes, and it's like,
Never meet your heroes. I was just about to say that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They
like
say never meet
there's
your
some
heroes.
like
So yeah,
sometimes that's wrong,
yeah,
and I'm happy
that's funny.
when that's wrong, but for the most part, it's true in the sense that like. And maybe it is just catching people off on a bad day. I mean, I've seen, for instance, I'm a wrestling fan, and sometimes when I
Okay.
see like wrestlers say like, "Oh, don't if you approach me at 3 a.m. in the airport and shove a camera phone in my face, don't expect me to smile." And I'm like, I totally get that. Like, that's
Yeah, that makes sense. Right.
right.
That's legit.
But and like for instance, I saw something the other day which was brilliant. It was like John Cena in London, and there was another instance of like a guy shoving a phone in his face and recording him,
Mm.
and John was like really just like polite and just like, hey, listen, you film me without my consent. You keep doing this, and I've asked you not to, and I'm not going to do anything for you. And then he sort of sarcastically says like, thank you for being respectful. Thank you for asking me,
Yeah.
and sort of walks out. And then I saw in the comments that some people were just like, oh, why didn't John do this? Why didn't John do that? But most people were saying like, well done to John for his
Right.
professionalism. And that's the way I look at it. It's like just treat people with respect and treat people how you would want to be treated, and yeah, keep your ego in check. Like don't let
Hmm.
like just because people are clapping and applauding you and telling you how brilliant you are, like that doesn't mean you need to let that get to your head. Like say thank you,
Hmm.
be grateful, and then just move on, and that's it. Easy
Go
as
create
that.
some more stuff. Go
Right,
create some
yeah,
more stuff.
exactly, yeah, keep
Yep.
creating, keep doing, keep creating stuff of value. um Give those people a reason to stay fans.
Exactly. And that's what it is. Oh, you know what? Speaking of though, what was the feeling? Like, how was your feeling the first time you saw yourself on TV?
I think I cringed.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, come on. It's awkward, isn't it? Like, I think it was a short film, and I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, oh.
Okay. So aside from you judging, like maybe, it wasn't like what made you cringe? Was it like the acting, or was it just the fact that you saw yourself on TV and you're just like what made you cringe?
Oh, it's my big stupid face and the way I
Okay.
sounded. I was like, oh, you sound like a jackass. Like, just I hated it. And
Was this
sometimes
your first production, your first like on camera thing, or?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've always recorded stuff like for
Mhm.
video and stuff, but yeah, this was like first official with like a proper camera and everything, and it took ages for it to be released, and it was finally released, and I was just like I tried to look at it objectively and be like,
Okay.
okay, like I always I watch back my stuff for the acting stuff to kind of see where I can improve, like what I'm getting
Of course.
better at, what mistakes I'm making. Like I do that.
Right.
But I don't really tend to sit down and watch myself because I just why would you?
Yeah.
I just you know what I mean. Um, like for instance, I remember one short film I did. The guy that I was acting with was an amazing actor. Like, he was more into like directorial stuff, but he
Okay.
was amazing, and it was a real pleasure to act with this guy. And every time I watch back that short film, I couldn't give two shits about myself. I'm just enthralled at his performance.
With his acting.
Yeah, like I'm just like I always tell people like, yeah, go check this guy out. It's amazing, but he's not pursuing acting, and I don't know why. He's brilliant, but
Hmm.
it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it comes down to that whole ego thing, isn't it? Like I don't really see myself as just anything. I'm just a guy with dreams. Really, that's it.
That's it.
Um, and yeah, like it's. I mean, it's kind of cool, I suppose. To see yourself doing the thing that you love and that you're pursuing. Like that's cool. But at the same time, yeah, I just you know what's funny? It's not
Mm.
acting, but like I don't know how to explain this properly, but like whenever someone, let's say in real life,
Hmm.
comes up to me, like a friend or someone, like I'll give an example. I started doing bar work recently, just to
Okay.
make ends meet, like here and there, and it's great. Like I hadn't done bar work in like 5 years, and I enjoy it. It's hard work, but hey, pays the bills, right? and gets me out of
That's
the
what it's
house.
about.
Right? Yeah, got to make that money, man. And so my housemate who works with me there tells me that one of the girls working there recognizes me from like a TikTok video, and I just died inside. I was like, "Oh no!" And he's like, "That's great, you're getting exposure." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. See, that would be fine if all of my stuff was like really serious acting stuff, you know." Because then it'd be like,
Oh,
"Oh, okay."
right.
I bet the video she's seen is of me just doing a stupid face
Something stupid, right?
and I just some
Right.
stupid video of me going like, "Ooh," and that's more likely. And I was just embarrassed, and he was like, "Well, it's a good thing." And I'm like, it's cringe."
Mm,
And
right.
that's me, man. That's my awkward. Like, if I was in real life and you told me how brilliant I was, I'd probably just get really shy and
Different.
like start blushing.
Right.
I don't know how to take like it's people tell me off online because I'm bad at taking compliments, right? So I'm even worse in real life. So, but I was being honest, man. That's how it is. Yeah. Um, but you know,
Yeah.
it
No,
is what it
but I
is.
think that's what it is. But I think that's part of staying humble also. You
Sure.
know, so no, I think you've got it all the way around. You know, when somebody sees you, regardless of whatever, staying humble and not taking the compliment, you know?
Thank you very much for watching this episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Tune in next time to watch part 2.